Last year, I decided to take a solo road trip from Wisconsin to Montana. It was one of those impulsive ideas that sounded better in theory, a chance to clear my head, see some new scenery, and test my endurance. The route stretched over 1,000 miles, cutting through a patchwork of desolate landscapes, dense forests, sprawling fields, and as I pushed west, the faint silhouettes of small mountains against the horizon. Most of the roads were barren, save for the first hour out of Wisconsin and the final stretch into Montana. Everything in between felt like a no-man's land, untouched and eerily quiet. To save time and avoid shelling out for an extra night in some overpriced roadside motel, I'd mapped it out as one relentless push, driving through the night and into the next day. I knew it'd be brutal, but I figured the trade-off was worth it. Fewer stops, less hassle, and a story to tell. I hit the road at 7 p.m., just as the last light bled from the sky. My car, a beat-up hatchback I'd nursed through too many winters, was loaded up. Duffel bag in the trunk, a cooler of snacks and drinks riding shotgun, a thermos of coffee nestled in the center console. I double-checked everything before pulling out, running through a mental list. Phone charger, spare tire, flashlight, the basics. Satisfied, I turned the key and eased onto the highway. The first hour was familiar. City streets gave way to sleepy small towns, their sodium lights flickering through my windshield. Porches glowed with jack-o'-lanterns left over from Halloween, and the occasional dog barked as I passed. Then, like a curtain dropping, civilization faded. The road opened up, stretching into a dark, endless ribbon flanked by skeletal trees and frost-kissed fields. Traffic dwindled to nothing. Gas stations popped up every 15 miles or so, their neon signs the only punctuation in the void. 2 hours in, my tank was still 2/3 full, but the gaps between stations were growing. I'd passed a couple already, dingy little outposts with flickering lights and rusted pumps, but the further west I went, the scarcer they became. Not wanting to risk it in the really rural stretch ahead, I decided to top off. After 20 minutes of scanning the dark for any sign of life, I spotted a station, a small, lonely speck off the highway. It was barely more than a shack, 4 pumps under a sagging canopy, a convenience store with darkened windows, and a closed sign dangling crookly on the door. No cars, no people, just the hum of the overhead lights cutting through the stillness. I pulled in, gravel crunching under my tires, and parked beside a pump. Stepping out, the cold bit at my fingers as I fumbled with the nozzle. The pump was ancient, or maybe just neglected. Gas trickled out so slowly I could have counted the drops. A minute ticked by for 1 measly gallon. I sighed, leaned against my car, and resigned myself to waiting, the faint smell of gasoline mixing with the damp earth. That's when I heard it, the low rumble of an engine. Headlights pierced the dark as a sedan rolled down the road. The speed limit was 55, but this guy was crawling 20, maybe 30 miles per hour, his high beams slicing through the night. He passed the station, taillights shrinking, then slowed and reversed, tires scraping the asphalt. My stomach tightened. It was a single-lane road, pitch black, and backing up like that felt reckless, dangerous even. The car swung into the station and parked at the pump right behind me, close enough that I could hear the engine tick as it idled. A tall figure stepped out, gray flannel shirt, black jeans, broad shoulders. He didn't say a word, didn't move toward the pump. He just stood there, staring at me. His eyes were dull, heavy, like he hadn't slept in days but was wired on something, caffeine, adrenaline, who knows. I forced an awkward smile and a nod, trying to play it cool, but he didn't react. The silence stretched, thick and unnerving. After what felt like forever, 10 seconds maybe, he finally grabbed the nozzle and started fueling. I exhaled, convincing myself I'd overreacted. He'd just missed the entrance, needed gas like me. That's all. The pump was still crawling, but I'd had enough. I yanked it out, capped my tank, and glanced back. He was watching me again, those dead eyes tracking my every move. My skin prickled. I muttered, weird guy, under my breath, climbed in and pulled back onto the highway, the station shrinking in my rear view. For the next 3 hours, I tried to shake it off, focusing on the road as it wound through the wilderness. Rain started around 11 p.m., a steady drumming that blurred the windshield and forced me to grip the wheel tighter. 5 hours in, just past midnight, exhaustion was clawing at me. The wipers thumped a hypnotic rhythm, and my snacks, an energy drink, some jerky, weren't cutting it anymore. My gas gauge dipped low again. I pressed on, the road a tunnel of wet black, until I spotted another station at 1 a.m. It was as run down as the last. Faded paint, flickering lights, but it'd do. I filled up, then parked beside the small building, out of the rain. A quick check on my phone showed no towns nearby, just a void of nothing. The rain wasn't letting up. I decided a 30-minute nap might reset me, reclined the seat, and drifted off to the sound of water slapping the roof. I woke 25 minutes later, groggy, the rain still relentless. My alarm hadn't buzzed yet. Rubbing my eyes, I sat up and peered through the windshield. The station was silent, save for a car at one of the pumps. I squinted, leaning forward. It was the same sedan, same color, same shape. My chest tightened. Too big a coincidence. Worse, the guy wasn't there, not in the car, not outside. The lot was empty. Pumps, locked store, nothing else. My breath fogged the glass as I scanned the shadows. Where the hell was he? Something felt wrong, deeply, viscerally wrong. I turned the key, shifted into reverse, and checked my mirror to back out. That's when I saw him. Not behind my car, in my back seat. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, bored into me through the dark, inches away. Panic exploded through me. I kicked the door open, half falling onto the wet pavement as I scrambled out. The car, still in reverse, rolled backward slowly, headlights swinging wild. I ran, shoes pounding the gravel, then ducked into the woods lining the lot. My heart hammered as I crouched behind a tree, watching. I never heard him get out. My car kept rolling, then stopped, jerked still. A second later, the engine roared, and he peeled out, taillights vanishing into the rain. I stood there, soaked and shaking, processing it. He'd taken my car, left me stranded in the middle of nowhere. My phone, still on the dashboard, was gone too. Then I noticed his sedan, sitting where he'd left it. I crept over, rain dripping down my neck. The door was unlocked, keys dangling in the ignition, groceries, bread, canned soup spilled across the back seat. A phone lay on the passenger floor. I grabbed it, hands trembling, and dialed 911 from the lock screen. Cops arrived eventually, their flashlights cutting through the downpour. The sedan was stolen, they said, part of a string of thefts. Whoever he was, he'd likely slipped into my car at that first stop, waiting to strike on the road. His last victim hadn't walked away unharmed. They searched, but he was gone, my car with him. I'd gotten lucky, they told me, but it didn't feel that way. Standing there, clutching a stranger's phone, I couldn't shake those eyes, dull yet piercing, like they'd seen me coming from miles away. He's still out there, and some nights, I swear I feel him watching. Story 2. Last January, I was holed up in my small house in a woodsy town about 45 minutes outside the city. It's the kind of place where the trees outnumber the people, tall pines and bare oaks crowding the edges of narrow roads, their branches clawing at the sky. My house sits at the end of a long, winding driveway, tucked away in a secluded pocket of the neighborhood where streetlights don't reach. That day, I'd only worked a half shift at the hardware store, so by mid-afternoon I was free. The rest of the day slipped by in a haze of coffee and scrolling my phone, the winter chill seeping through the windows despite the heater's best efforts. Around 7 p.m., as the sky turned a bruised shade of purple, my phone buzzed. It was a friend. His ancient pickup had crapped out again, leaving him stranded at his job. He asked if I could swing by, give him a ride home, maybe grab some food on the way. It wasn't the first time I'd played roadside rescuer for him, so I didn't mind. "Be there soon," I said, already reaching for my jacket. I shrugged on my old wool coat, the one with the frayed cuffs, and fished my keys from the clutter on the kitchen counter. The house was quiet, too quiet, maybe, with just the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I had idealized the front door, my boots crunching the frozen grass as I stepped onto the porch. That's when I froze. A man stood there, barely a foot away, so close I could have reached out and touched him. He was tall, wrapped in a heavy coat that hung off his frame like a shroud, a black gaiter scarf pulled up over the lower half of his face, leaving only his eyes visible, dark, unblinking, fixed on me. My heart slammed against my ribs, and for a split second, I was too startled to move. He didn't flinch, didn't jump back like I did. He just stood there, statue still, as if he'd been waiting. "Sorry," he muttered, voice low and rough. "Was just about to knock." I swallowed, forcing a shaky, "It's fine," past the lump in my throat, and asked what he wanted. He paused, head tilting slightly, then said, "You David?" Or Daryl, maybe. The names didn't register. Neither was mine. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Okay," he replied, flat and final, before turning and trudging off the porch. His boots left deep impressions in the thin snow as he headed down the driveway, a slow, deliberate pace that didn't match the urgency of someone lost or late. I waited, breath fogging in the cold, until he disappeared into the shadows of the trees before locking the door and heading to my car, the encounter looping in my mind. The drive to pick up my friend was a blur. My headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the skeletal outlines of branches and the occasional deer eyes glinting at the roadside. My place isn't the kind of spot where strangers just show up, too deep in the woods, too far from anything. If he was looking for someone, it made sense he'd gotten turned around, but something about it gnawed at me, his stillness, those eyes. I grabbed my friend from the auto shop where he worked, his grease-stained hands waving as he climbed in. We hit Culver's for a quick burger run, the smell of fries filling the car as we traded small talk about his truck's latest breakdown. By the time I dropped him off at his place, a cramped duplex on the edge of town, it was pushing 9 p.m. Light snow had started falling, dusting the windshield in tiny flakes, but the night felt calm, the air crisp and still. Back home, I pulled into the driveway, tires crunching over fresh powder. The house looked the same as I'd left it, dark windows, a faint glow from the porch light I'd forgotten to turn off. Inside, I kicked off my boots, the warmth of the heater thawing my numb fingers as I sank onto the couch. The TV flickered on, some late-night rerun I didn't care enough to change, and I let the hours slip away. With no work the next day, time didn't matter. I must have been there 2 hours, maybe more, the drone of canned laughter lulling me toward sleep. Stretching, I switched off the screen and shuffled toward the stairs, the house settling into its usual nighttime groans. But as I passed the front door, that guy's face flashed back, unbidden sharp. I stopped, a prickle running up my spine, and pressed my eye to the people. Nothing but the snowy night stared back, quiet, undisturbed, the world draped in white. Then I saw them, footprints, fresh and deep, cutting across the driveway from the road, past my car, and veering into the yard where the tree swallowed them. My pulse kicked up, a cold sweat breaking out. This wasn't right. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, pacing by the window as I stammered out what I'd seen. The operator's voice was steady, asking questions I barely registered. A faint noise, soft, elusive, kept tugging at my ears, vanishing whenever I held my breath to listen. She probably thought I was losing it. Then it came, a violent thud against the back of the house, loud enough to rattle the walls. I nearly dropped the phone, adrenaline surging as I bolted to the hallway. Another crash. Through the glass of the back door, a shadow moved, vague, hulking, pounding with something heavy. The third blow shook the frame, a splintering crack echoing. "Run or hide," the operator barked. I snatched my keys from the counter, boots half on, and sprinted for the front door, expecting hands to grab me from the dark. None did. I made it to my car, engine roaring to life as I peeled out, snow spraying behind me. When the cops got there later, the back door was bashed open, wood splintered, hinges bent. Wet footprints tracked across the kitchen and living room, melting into puddles, but the house was empty. I gave them his description, the coat, the scarf, those eyes, but there was no proof it was him. They searched the woods, flashlights slicing through the trees, but found nothing. No arrest, no leads. He'd slipped away. Talking it over with the officers, I realized how close I'd come. If I hadn't run into him earlier, I wouldn't have checked the door before bed. If I'd been asleep, he might have crept in silent as the snow, no thud to wake me. I got lucky, they said. Maybe. He's still out there, and some nights, lying in the dark, I feel the weight of that, okay, he left me with, like a promise he's not done. Story 3. Back in 2019, I was a sophomore in college, juggling classes and a side gig babysitting 3 or 4 nights a week to chip away at my car payments. It was a hand-me-down sedan, dented hood, squeaky brakes, but it got me around, and I was determined to own it outright. One steady job had me watching a quiet 3-year-old boy once a week for about a month. The family lived in a modest split-level house on the edge of town, where the streetlights faded into patchy woods and the neighbors were far enough apart to feel isolated. The parents were soft-spoken, always polite, a little reserved, maybe, but warm enough. They'd leave right around the kids' bedtime, slipping out for 4 or 5 hours. I never pried about where they went. Once they'd mentioned something vague about heading into the city date nights, I assumed, or maybe a late shift they didn't want to explain. Either way, my job was simple. Keep an eye on the kid, make sure he stayed asleep, and hold down the fort until they got back. One night, I pulled into their driveway at 8 p.m. The sky already a deep, inky blue. My headlights swept across the front yard, unkempt grass. A tricycle tipped over near the porch steps. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed with a water bottle, some textbooks I wouldn't read, and a bag of pretzels, and headed inside. The parents met me at the door, coats already on. "He's asleep in his room," the mom said with a tired smile, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thanks again." The dad nodded, jingling his keys, and they were out the door before I could say much more than "no problem." I locked it behind them, the deadbolt clicking into place, and set my stuff down on the kitchen counter. The house smelled faintly of lavender, some candle or air freshener, and the hum of the furnace filled the stillness. I did my usual walkthrough, peeked into the kid's room where he was tucked under a dinosaur blanket, breathing slow and steady, checked the back door, locked tight, glanced out the front windows at the empty street. Everything was in order. I settled into the living room, sinking into a worn armchair by the coffee table, and pulled out my phone to kill time. The first hour dragged by, the glow of my screen lighting up the dim room as I scrolled through videos and half-hearted attempts at studying. The parents always said, "Feel free to watch TV or make yourself dinner." But I rarely did, too awkward rummaging through someone else's kitchen, too lazy to figure out their remote. About an hour and around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed, the mom's name flashing across the screen. I answered, puzzled. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, a slight edge to her tone. "Yeah, all good here," I said. "Why?" she hesitated. "Did you just call me?" I blinked. "No, I've been here the whole time. Haven't called anyone." She explained she'd gotten a call from an unknown number, no caller ID, just silence when she picked up. "Thought maybe you got a new phone or something," she said, almost to herself. I reassured her, kid was fine, house was quiet, and she murmured, "Okay, thanks," before hanging up. I brushed it off as parental nerves, the kind that kicks in when you're away from your kid too long. I got up, stretched, and tiptoed past the boy's room again. He hadn't stirred. Back in the armchair, I let the incident fade. 20 minutes later, a flash of light cut through the room. Headlights streamed through the cracks in the blinds, sharp and steady. I glanced up, expecting them to sweep past, a neighbor pulling in late. but they didn't move. Curious, I set my phone down and edged to the window, nudging the blinds apart. A rusty gray sedan sat at the curb, right in front of the house. It was old, beat up, dents along the side, windows so tinted they swallowed the light. My stomach did a little flip. Then I saw him. A man standing a few feet from the car, near the end of the driveway, close to the sidewalk. He wasn't moving, just staring up at the house, head tilted, hands in his pockets. The street lamp barely caught him, leaving his face a blur of shadow. I froze, watching as the seconds stretched. Was he lost? Drunk? I didn't want to find out. Not my house, not my problem. After a minute, he turned, slow and deliberate, and climbed back into the sedan. The engine coughed to life, and he pulled away, crawling down the road like he was still scanning the place. I tracked the headlights as they flickered through the trees lining the street, then stopped, far off, but still visible. They lingered there, a distant glow before winking out. Parked, maybe. Or he'd gotten out. My pulse ticked up. I stayed by the window, blinds cracked, for a good 5 minutes, expecting him to double back. He didn't. Maybe he was just some guy looking for an address, mixed up in the dark. The neighborhood was quiet, row of houses, sure, but no foot traffic this late. I shook it off, or tried to, and sank back into the chair. Still, the unease lingered, prickling at the edges of my thoughts. I flicked on the TV, keeping the volume low so it wouldn't wake the kid, and opened the blinds fully. Better to see out than feel blind. For the next hour and a half, maybe 2, nothing happened. The TV droned, some cooking show I wasn't really watching, and I fought to stay awake, my eyelids growing heavy. The house settled around me, the occasional creak of the walls blending with the soft static of the screen. I was half dozing, caught in that fuzzy space between sleep and awareness, when a faint thump snapped me out of it. I blinked, unsure. Then it came again, sharper, closer. I sat up, wide awake now, ears straining. It wasn't the kid. He'd have cried if he'd fallen out of bed. I stood, hesitating, and started toward his room to check anyway. Passing through the hallway, another thump, louder, deliberate, stopped me cold. Something flickered in the corner of my eye. I turned. A man stood at the back door, his face pressed to the glass, eyes locked on mine. My breath caught. He yanked the handle, hard, the door rattling in its frame. When he saw me staring, he doubled down, pulling with both hands, trying to force it. Panic flooded me. I bolted up the stairs, heart pounding, and scooped the kid from his bed. He stirred, groggy, but I shushed him, clutching him close as the thumps below turned into crashes, something heavy now, smashing against the wood. I crept back down, legs trembling, just as a final crack split the air, plastic and metal giving way. The back door hung open, splintered, and he stormed in, casual clothes, dark hair, a knife glinting in his fist. He didn't hesitate, charging straight at me. I spun, kid in my arms, and sprinted for the front door, fumbling the lock as his footsteps thudded closer. I burst outside, cold air biting my face, and threw us into my car. The key jammed in the ignition, then caught. He was at my window, knife raised, as I slammed it into reverse and peeled out, tires screeching. I drove a few blocks, hands shaking, and pulled over in a lit-up gas station lot, calling 911 and the parents in a breathless rush. Cops swarmed the house, but he was gone, vanished into the night. The parents showed up, pale and frantic, thanking me over and over before ushering the kid away. That was it. No more calls, no more jobs. They cut me off completely, like I were gone, known the kid was alone with me. Why him? Why that night? I dug around later and found out the mom had an ex-husband, dark hair, rough build, a vague match to the guy. No proof, just a hunch. Years have passed, and it's still a blank slate. No arrests, no answers. The parents' silence says more than they ever did. Some nights, I replay it, the headlights, the thumps, that knife, and wonder if he's still out there, waiting for another chance.